The way we lead impacts the way people live. This world needs truly human leadership. I'm Brent Stewart, your host. Thanks for listening. This podcast is an outreach of Barry-Wehmiller. You can connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, and find our podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. You're listening to a Truly Human Leadership podcast refresher, where we reshare insight from podcast episodes from the past. Bob Burg is a sought-after speaker at company leadership and sales conferences. He shared the platform with today's top thought leaders, broadcast personalities, Olympic athletes, and political leaders, including a former U.S. president. He is the co-author of the international bestseller The Go-Giver and Go-Givers Sell More, and author of Endless Referrals and numerous other books that have together sold more than 1 million copies. Bob first learned of Barry-Wehmiller when he read an early copy of our CEO Bob Chapman's upcoming book, Everybody Matters, which comes out October 6th. Authors regularly get many different books sent to them, so Everybody Matters could have very easily just ended up on a pile on Bob Burg's desk. But he looked through it and he fell in love with the book. And this is what he had to say. Everybody Matters simply blew me away. This is the book that practically every corporate CEO in North America has been breathlessly waiting for, even if they don't know it yet. Bob Burg is another person we've met along the way who is out there saying some of the same things we are about a better way for business to do business. And what's great is that when we meet these leaders and connect with each other, our voices become even louder in spreading a message that needs to be heard. Mary Rudder, Barry-Wehmiller's global messaging leader, and I sat down with Bob to talk about being a go-giver, about service to others, and about how that contributes to a world where everybody matters. So here's Bob Burg.
Well, I actually began as a broadcaster. I was first in radio, and then I was out in the, I worked for a Midwestern TV station, a very, very small ABC affiliate. And I had worked my way up to the late night news anchorship. I was really kind of a lousy news anchor, though. I was 24 years old. I was right out of school, and I really didn't have an understanding of the news. And I guess back then I really didn't care. It would be different these days, but back then I didn't. I could read the news, but I certainly wasn't a journalist. And I think probably my attitude was even a little bit too positive for the medium itself. I mean, my idea of a good newscast opener would have been to say something like, "Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Burg. In the news tonight, everything's great. Go to sleep. We'll let you know if something comes up." Yeah. And I soon found myself out of broadcasting, and what I call graduated into sales. And the challenge was I knew nothing about sales. And so I had the motivation, but I didn't have the information. And so I floundered, for the first couple of months. And then I was in a bookstore one day. And this is 35 years ago. This is back in the day when the main feature of a bookstore was books. And so I was in the business section, saw a book called How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. And just seeing the title of the book gave me hope, because I said, wow, there's a master the art of selling. There's an art to this. And I took it back, and after the regular business day was over, I just immersed myself in the book. Started as Tom Hopkins said. I don't know if I mentioned the book was by Tom Hopkins, and of course it's a classic by this time. I would practice, drill, rehearse, highlight, underline, do everything I was supposed to, and within 3 weeks my sales began to go through the roof, and I began making a study of sales. Started reading and studying Zig Ziglar, who really became a great hero of mine, and many others. And what's interesting about that is, there was really no difference in 3 weeks other than having knowledge, having a system. And I often define a system as simply the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key being predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you can get the desired results of B, then you know that all you need to do is A, and you'll get the desired results of B. And, it's sort of like, and I remember in the book, everybody matters. What I thought was such a cool statement is that Barry-Wehmiller has gone in and dozens of companies, hundreds of companies they've taken from being really non-functional to being just a fantastic, functional, happy, profitable company. And really at this point, you've all got it so systemized, it's a very predictable process that in doing that, you're touching the lives of so many companies, so many people, and just bringing so much value to the world. And so, it was really from my sales experience that I then got into speaking, sharing with others what was working for me, and developed systems based on what was working for me. And that eventually turned into my first book, which was Endless Referrals. And then I had a few others, and then the big one that I was fortunate to co-author with John David Mann, a fantastic writer, The Go-Giver, which sort of took the philosophy and put it into story form.
Where, at that point in your story, where would you say your leadership journey began?
Well, it began when I first realized that I was not a very good leader. Okay, I was a producer. I was not a leader. In other words, in sales, I could produce. Even when I worked my way up in the last company before speaking, where I was sales manager, I wasn't a good leader. I could still, I still went out and sold, and I showed the salespeople that came on how to go through the selling process. I taught selling skills to them, but I didn't build a big organization. And really the reason was because of a lack of leadership. And soon after I got into speaking and began building a profitable speaking career, I also realized that while I could do certain things, again, I could produce and I could teach others how to, there was really a lack in my leadership skills. And so I began to study leadership. I began, reading everything I could get my hands on from John Maxwell and many others as well, and just started reading about leadership, and then of course applying. It's not enough just to read. We've got to be willing to apply what we're learning. And as time went on, my leadership abilities rose, and I'm very fortunate there are so many great teachers. And to this day, I read blogs on leadership, continue to read books on leadership, and of course, my new favorite one.
So you spoke about The Go-Giver, which has been an enormous success in that it has resonated with so many people. What was the origin of that book? It's kind of an interesting story in that it's a parable. Mm-hmm. It's not just step 1, step 2, step 3. Where did the idea for that come from, and why did you decide to write it as a parable?
Sure, and you make a great point, because I tend to be a step 1, step 2, step 3 type of person. My book, Endless Referrals, is absolutely a step-by-step guide to creating win-win relationships. The basic premise of Endless Referrals was that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And I outline a bunch of steps for that to happen, and it's predictable, and it does. But through the years, I'd been reading a lot of business parables. I think my first one I ever read was Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World, and then Klassen's Richest Man in Babylon, and then in the early 80s, the 1 Minute series by Doctors Blanchard and Johnson. And there are so many others. So many great business parables out there. And I would learn from every one of them, and I always found them to be so enjoyable, because you could read for an hour and a half, 2 hours, be through with it, be greatly entertained, and come up with some fantastic wisdom that they taught. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could take the basic premise of endless referrals, the all things being equal, and really the shifting of focus from yourself to others, and put that into a parable. So I came up with the story, the basic story idea and the title. But as I began to write it, actually about a minute after I began writing it. I realized that there's a big difference between writing a how-to book, which all my other books have been, and writing a business parable, which is essentially a work of fiction, even though there are success true principles in there and that we would include things that really happened. There's still a big difference. And I realized that not only was it out of my comfort zone, which I'm not worried about, I can live outside my comfort zone, but it was outside my strength zone. And I knew I was not going to be able to do justice to what this could be. So I reached out to John David Mann, who at the time was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write for. And John is a brilliant writer, and people who are in the know in that particular niche knew that John was a fantastic writer and had ghostwritten a couple of really big selling books, but that most people didn't know who he was. I knew who he was and how great he was, but also as an editor, what I always found, because he would edit my articles every month, he'd always send it back. He's such a brilliant guy, but he was always so humble. He'd say, he'd write back, I changed this and I added to this. Is this okay? And the running joke was I would always respond by writing back, John, not only is it okay, you write my stuff better than I write my stuff. And he was really the only person that I envisioned co-authoring this with me. And I asked him if he would do it, if he would be the lead writer and storyteller. And fortunately for me, he agreed. And we collaborated on this, and it worked out well. But that's really how it began. The basic premise, and this is what we really wanted to make the point through Joe, the protege's journey, is that shifting one's focus, and this is really the key, shifting one's focus from getting to giving. And in this context, when we say giving, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing value to others. And that doing so is not only a nice way to live life, but a very financially profitable way as well. And that's whether you're in sales, whether you're in leadership, whether you're a family member, what have you. And that's really what it's all about.
And this is based upon those 5 laws of stratospheric success. So yes. What do you mean by stratospheric success? How do you define that?
Well, success can be defined in many different ways. It can be very contextual in nature. I mean, success can be as simple as accomplishing a goal that you set out to accomplish. If you set out to, lose 20 pounds in 4 months, and you lose 20 pounds in 4 months, you were successful. If you lost 18 pounds in those 4 months, you were successful. You were 90% successful. You were successful in terms of improving where you were, but weren't successful in terms of reaching 100% of the goal. You could have a baseball game and the Cardinals beat the Marlins. Well, the Cardinals were successful. The Marlins were not successful. You could say, well, maybe the Marlins played better than their potential. So in that way, they were successful, and that's fine, but not success in terms of how we would define winning and losing. I remember that one of my favorite definitions of success was from Earl Nightingale, who said, success is the progressive realization of a worthwhile dream or goal. So to him, even the progress itself of going after something worthwhile and making progress, building on your small successes, that was successful. I like to define success in a general term as a feeling, as an overall feeling of genuine happiness and peace of mind, the result of doing one's best in living up to their potential. So that to the degree they lived up to their potential, that's the degree to which they were successful. I think in Joe's case, the protege, it was a matter of that he was an up-and-coming, guy with a lot of potential, and yet he was doing things in a way that were very counterproductive and was not realizing the kind of success that he envisioned for himself. And when he met Pindar, the main mentor, and some of the other mentors in the story, and he began to shift his focus through those 5 laws, that's when he began to see a change in the results. And then following that, a change in his level of success. And he became very financially successful. But, success is more than just financial. There's financial success, but there's also physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, relational. And John David Mann and I believe that success principles apply across the board. So if you do it correctly, you should attain success not only in business but all across the board in terms of life.
Yeah, it's similar to what we practice throughout Barry-Wehmiller. I mean, we really have tried and to perpetuate a whole culture of service,
Absolutely.
Seizing every opportunity to serve. We actually have a class that we teach now, and I think that is at the heart of what you're trying to say is look at every opportunity to add value to serve others, and then be open to what happens as a consequence of that.
Well, you make a great point, and one reason I just am so in love with the book Everybody Matters and your entire organization is that's exactly what you stand for. Your guiding principles of leadership are all encompassing. It's not just a matter of it being while you're at work. It's the guy who went home and found that he had a better relationship with his wife and his kids. And it's, understanding that everybody who works there is somebody's precious son or daughter. It's all those things, which is just, and as is so important to understand, it's not some just, self-sacrificial kind of thing. No, it works all around the board because you're also a very financially successful company. It's not one or the other. It's not just, well, I care about the, making money or I care about serving other people. No, we would say that if you want to make a lot of money, you need to take your eyes off yourself. You've got to move from an I focus or me focus to an other focus, understanding that the marketplace itself, whether that marketplace is your employees' family, your prospective customers, to the degree that your focus is on adding value to them, that's the degree they're going to feel good about themselves and feel good about you. They are going to know you. They are going to like you. They are going to trust you.
Well, going back to what you were talking about, when we were discussing The Go-Giver just a second ago, there's one of your books that I wanted to bring up. And I understand it's actually kind of timely to bring this book up because there's a new edition of it coming out next year. But it was originally titled It's Not About You, a little story about what matters most in business. Could you talk a little bit about that book, what was behind writing it, and just kind of a little bit of the story of that book?
Yeah, it's a follow-up, if you will, to The Go-Giver, in that it's held in the same fictional town as The Go-Giver was. It has a couple of recurring characters, not many, but we put a lot of situations in there where people who read the first book will get kind of a kick out of being reminded of certain things. But it's not something where someone has to read The Go-Giver in order to understand that one. So it is self-contained. It was called It's Not About You. It was a book really about leadership and influence. And the premise really, in a sense, was that the best leaders know it isn't about them. So, great leadership, when you think about it, is never about the leader. Great influence is never about the influencer, and great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. It's always about the other person. It's always about those people whose lives you choose to touch, those lives you choose to add value to. So that's really what It's Not About You is saying. It's always about the other person. Here's what's interesting, though. That title, although The Go-Giver has sold over 500,000 copies at this point, It's Not About You really didn't sell that well. And what we found out by doing numerous studies, meaning we asked a whole lot of people, is that the name was kind of a turnoff to people. A lot of people didn't get it. Plus, it was sort of, well, if it's not about me, why would I buy it? Yeah. But I think the other thing is where The Go-Giver is a book that people have been giving out massively as gifts to other people. You can't really gift a book to someone with the title It's Not About You. I mean, it's like giving someone a bottle of Lavoris, right? Mouthwash. What are they trying to tell me by So we've actually changed the title to The Go-Giver Leader, which really is much more reflective of the brand and of the message itself.
Yeah. It was fascinating when I was looking through your catalog. I was kind of drawn to that because I felt like it was kind of a simpatico message, although the title is It's Not About You. You know, we titled our book Everybody Matters, kind of flipping that concept.
Right. It actually is very congruent with Everybody Matters. It's just, and again, I think you're right. And the title just kind of, what does that really mean? You know, so Everybody Matters was a great title. It's Not About You, not such a great title.
In terms of writing the book, you probably had a realization along the way that it wasn't about you. Is there an instance in your life where you kind of, and you did kind of talk about it a little bit earlier in your leadership journey, but was there an instance in your life where you kind of realized that, where that clicked with you?
Well, you know, I'll tell you, that's a great question. And I recall one time when I was in sales with a particular company, and I came back to the office and I was disappointed because the prospect just didn't get it, didn't understand why this product would have been so great for them. And I remember one of the kind of older people at the company who had a very distinguished career, not even in sales. He was an engineer and he was just about to retire. And he kind of, I think he saw me as that up and coming guy, maybe like Joe in The Go-Giver, right? That up and coming guy who wasn't quite there and needed a bit of an attitude adjustment. And he said to me two things that were very important. First, he said to me, you know, Burg, when the shooter misses the target, it ain't the target's fault. In other words, what he was saying is it wasn't up to the prospective customer to get why this product would have been good for him. It was up to me to effectively communicate. But what he said next was a real difference maker. He said, Burg, if you want to make a lot of money in business, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, never have making money as your target. Your target is serving others, serving your customers. Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward. That reward, he said, will be money, and you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is not the target. The money is simply the reward for hitting the target. Your target is service. Your target is serving others. And fortunately, I was in a learner's state of mind because I took that in, and it made a huge, huge difference in my sales. It made a huge difference in my success as a human being. And really, when you think of it, the first law, which talks about, you know, focusing on providing value to others, is really a key aspect of that. You know, one thing John David Mann and I say is that money is simply an echo of value. Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder to value's lightning, which means nothing more than the value must come first. And that must be your focus, providing value to others. The value comes first, and the money you receive is simply a very natural and direct result of the value you provide.
Leave us with a thought on what's the one thing that we should remember from The Go-Giver.
I think if we look at focusing on providing value to others, we also have to understand that value is always in the eyes of the beholder. It's not what we think is valuable or why we think someone else should think it's valuable. It's what is it that this person feels is valuable. And the way we get to know that is by asking questions and by listening, genuinely listening, in order to understand and be able to provide that person with what they need.
Don't forget to find us and connect on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller. And you can find more podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart. Thanks for listening.